The river is you going into the unknown. It's you going somewhere where you haven't gone before, because you are not going to change by doing the same exact things you're already doing, because that is going to keep you the same. Your personality is going to remain the same. If you're thinking the same, you're acting the same, and you're feeling the same, nothing changes, which means that in order to change, you're going to need to change how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And if you can do that, then that means that you're going to go into the unknown. If you can do that, it means that you're going to take a step into the river. And yes, fears are going to come up because you're like, oh my God, this is really uncomfortable. I've never crossed this river before. I don't know what I'm doing. If I take a different action, in my business, in my love life, in the way that I'm eating, in the way that I'm working out, if I do things differently, will it work out? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? How am I going to do this? How am I going to cross the river? How? And that's where most people stay stuck for months or years at a time, because they sit at the edge of that river and they know they got to cross in order to get to B, but they're too scared, or they don't know how to actually create that change, how to change how they think, how to change how they act, how to change how they feel. But that's literally what has to be done in order for the crossing to happen. Welcome to It's Not What You Think, the podcast that takes you on a transformative journey to rewrite your story of greatness and reawaken your soul's purpose. I'm your host, Celine DaCosta, a subconscious mind expert, master coach, and believer in the limitless power and magic that lives within all of us. My intention in this podcast is to propel you into your next level of success so that you are free to create the life that your heart most desires. Through deep, actionable insights, personal stories, and world-class guests, I'll provide you with the tools, strategies, and resources you need to unlock the fullest expression of who you're meant to be in this lifetime, so that you can consciously design a reality that is beyond what you could have ever dreamed of. Join me on this journey to personal growth and evolution, and let's live our lives in accordance with our highest soul's calling. This podcast is your weekly check-in to help this path become more simple, obtainable, and fun. Thank you for tuning in today, and now let's dive in. Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I am diving into the topic of change, and specifically, I'm going to take you behind the scenes of how I lead myself through change. Change is such a big word. It's a very vague word that we use all the time. And one of the things that I've realized throughout my journey of self-development and evolution is that change is the most important skill set that we can possibly have in our toolbox. This goes back, I was recently in the Galapagos back in January, which is where Charles Darwin developed his theory of adaptation of the species. So this topic of change and evolution and species that went into extinction was really popular there. It was something that was very top of mind. And I remember having this reflection of this very just raw animal reflection of, wow, when we don't adapt as a species, we go extinct. When a species is unable to adapt itself to new conditions, to new changing environmental, biological, chemical conditions, then that species will die out. And as I was learning more about that and really, reflecting on that, I realized that it's the microcosm of that is humans and us changing, and this constant desire that we have to grow, because consciousness is always looking to expand. That's the nature of consciousness. And so the more conscious we become during our journey, the more aware, the more we embody our conscious awareness, the more we're going to want to expand and grow It's so natural. You're either growing or you're dying. And in order to grow, you need to be able to change. Because if you don't change, then nothing changes, then we're dying. But if we know how to change, then we know how to grow. So when I ask myself the question, how can I grow? How can I do so with more ease? Because sometimes growth can be really uncomfortable and really painful. How can I do this with the most ease and grace? And the answer was, I just need to get better at changing. I need to get better at being able to shapeshift my identity to fit or to be able to hold my expanding consciousness. And I need to be able to change myself, change my patterns, change my habits, change the ways I walk in the world to be able to also adapt to the changing circumstances, which during this time, that we're living in with the quickening of technology and the online world, with the quickening of what's happening in the cosmos, just energetically, now through 2025, with all of that, things are changing. And they're changing really fast. And, I remember seeing this graph one time about the Industrial Revolution and how it took like a couple hundred years to make machines. And then in the past 20 years, the technological evolutions that have happened in the past 20 years, since I was a child, are just below what's been happening the past 200 years out of the water. Like things are changing and they're moving and they're evolving at a faster and faster and faster rate than they ever have in the history of our recorded humankind. So with all that being said, when I look at me, the human, this has been a skill set that I have been consciously developing for the past almost 10 years. Really looking at the ways of how can I understand the biology of change, because it's a biological phenomenon, as well as the mindset of change and the art of change, because there's a science to changing, but there's also an art. And that's what led me through my deep dive studies of neurolinguistic programming, of hypnotherapy. I also recently studied under Dr. Joe Dispenza's corporate training, his private training, which I did a whole podcast episode about, just sharing the insights from that. So I have really spent a lot of time diving into understanding and answering the questions, how can people change? How can they change faster? And how can I change faster? So in today's episode, I've already done a podcast episode speaking more generally around the science of change and how change works, and I'll touch on a few of those topics as well today. But today's episode is a bit more personal, I would say, because I wanted to take you through how I'm leading myself through change right now during this period, and to also, share a bit about the frameworks that I use to make my change be more easeful, as well as the not so perfect parts of where I'm still feeling like I'm being challenged by change. But it's a challenge that I joyfully accept, because I know that the more I overcome this challenge, the better of a skill set I develop in something that is so, so, so important for our ability to adapt, and what I believe is our ability to really be at peace in our environment, and to be in a deep sense of joy and fulfillment, because people suffer a lot when they are not willing to change and their environment doesn't change. So, when the classic example would be, if you are working a job at a company and then the company changes its policies, and now you used to, be able to work remotely 5 days out of the week, and now you have to come into the office 2 days out of the week. Like, that is a change that you quote unquote can't control. If you don't have a way to adapt to that internally, then you just basically you become a victim to your environment, and you allow things that change outside of you, which is inevitable, to push you around. And having this, I think of it like, I don't know how many of you have watched the movie The Matrix. When you have this gift of changing, I almost see it as when Neo, the gunshots are coming at Neo and everything slows down, and you're able to like pivot and really allow yourself to move and shift to avoid those gun drops. Is it that the word? Gunshots, gun drops. I'm not to be confused with gumdrops, which are delicious. So yeah, the gunshots. It's that ability to be able to like, you know, um, not let yourself get shot by change, basically. So I'll start by sharing what inspired me to sit down and have a conversation on this topic, which is that I'm currently going through a really huge pivot in my business. It is terrifying, because it's like, so I know that the change I need to make is so big, and in order for me to be able to make that change successfully, I first have to change who I am so I can become the version of me who is an energetic match for the change that I'm dreaming into being. And I also, there's so many fears that come up in that. So I thought it would be really perfect for me to have this conversation with you now instead of the time when I'm on the other side already and I feel better, because now is the moment where those objections come up, where those objections of, but this is too scary, but I can't do this, but what if, this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? So yeah, where do I begin? That I can already feel like my nervous system being like, oh my God, we're going to dive into this topic and we're going to talk about it out loud. Sometimes when I choose these topics, I have this intuitive feeling that I need to talk about it, but I don't always come with, actually I mostly of the time do not come up with a script, because I want to allow myself to be as raw and vulnerable and truthful as I can be. And the only way I do that is if I surprise myself by what comes out of my mouth. Dong, dong, dong. Okay. So before I dive into the big pivot in my business right now, so what feels right to start with is just a broad description of the nature of change, which is that when you want to change, you need to change your personality. So your personality is, another word for it is the ego personality. It's what one of my mentors taught me is anything that comes after I am is your personality, the ego construct of who you think you are. So I am a coach. I am a daughter. I am a friend. I am Italian. I am ... It's all ego, It's all the identity that we are prescribing for ourselves. So if we zoom in to what is a personality? Okay, I have to change my personality. Well, what does that mean? That's really broad. So your personality is composed of 3 different things. Your personality is how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So how you think, how you act, and how you feel are the ingredients that comprise what we call your personality. And your personality, contrary to what many, many, many people think and claim, is changeable. You can change it. You are not fixed to it. It is not a cross you need to bear for the end of your days. And that's not to be confused with your nature. Your nature is just who you are by nature. It's even hard to put words to it because it's like your innate gifts. It's just like how you are. For example, some of us, it's in our nature to be more extroverted than other people. Some of us it's in our nature to have an affinity for spicy food more than sweet foods or whatever. Like there's things that we're just kind of like wired with, and when we come into this world, we're just wired with it. But again, that is not to be confused with a personality, which is how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And for many people in the world, this is conditioned because many of us did not grow up in an environment where we were free to think, to act, and to feel as we per our nature. And think about it this way. Some of you are very blessed to have had that environment, But perhaps, those of you who either were part of the environment I'm about to describe or know someone who was can relate to that like innocent child who is really curious, like whose nature is to be really curious and inquisitive. And she's at a party, she's at a cocktail party, like her parents brought her to this adult party, and this child notices that this married couple is being really rude to each other. And the child says, "Why are you being so rude to your husband, auntie?" And then the adult's like, "Shh, don't say that. You can't say these things. Don't ever say these things. It's not nice to say these things." And then what happens is that the child gets uploaded with a belief system that tells the child it is not okay to speak my mind. So now the child thinks it is not okay to speak my mind. And therefore, moving forward, every time she's being curious per her nature and she's about to speak her mind, she holds back her voice, her authentic expression, because it's not nice. So then she acts quiet, and then she feels like her voice doesn't matter. And so fast forward 20 years from now, and this person is maybe starting her own business. And as she's starting her own business, this, former child who's really curious and really loved to express herself openly, authentically, is now holding back um, from actually saying what she wants to say in her brand messaging. She feels like she can't speak up in team meetings, so she just kind of like plays the nice girl. And then inside, she feels like really unworthy, but she doesn't feel safe being able to say what she wants to really say. And then the results of that, for example, is a business where it's like a diluted version of who she really wants to do. She's unhappy in her business. She's unhappy in her marriage because she's not speaking up. She's unhappy in her friendships because her friends walk all over her. And hopefully you can see where I'm going here. It's part of her personality to be quiet and to hold herself back. But is it actually her true authentic nature? No. So there are so many aspects of our personality that we unconsciously create all the way back when we were children. And then we start to become these people that we're not actually. And, there's some aspects of your personality that can be really wonderful. It can be, you may have been conditioned to, smile at everyone, but even that can be harmful if it's not genuine and authentic. So it's really, from my understanding, like, by all means, I don't freaking fully, I'm not like a guru here speaking on my chair, like the beacon of all knowing, but I have learned some things along the way. And what I have found has made my life much easier is understanding that anything about my personality can be changed, can be shifted, can be evolved, because it's basically like the avatar that I'm playing with on Earth School. And this avatar has like settings, like a video game. There's certain settings that you can play up, play down, and according to the environment. And what's really the measuring stick ultimately of my joy and my fulfillment is not whether I am acting according to the personality that of what I think and feel I should be, but rather am I acting, am I feeling, am I thinking, is it actually in alignment with my authenticity, with who I really am in my nature? And that my connection to soul, which is something that I talk a lot about in my episodes. And I did an entire episode, which I definitely recommend you check out on ego or soul, which one is in driver's seat, to really help you understand how to discern between the two. But if I feel I'm acting or thinking or feeling in alignment to my soul, then I'm like, oh, my avatar is updated. It's up to date. Like software update is successful. Like, my current personality self is in alignment with that vision or that dream that I'm walking towards. But if it's not, then I need to change it. I need to adjust. I need to adapt. I need to pivot and not have an attachment to that, and be okay with letting parts of my ego die, the so-called ego death. And having experienced a few ego deaths myself, I've also observed that ego deaths can be super painful. They're like so hard. They can be so hard. And I've also come to realize that they don't have to be so hard every time, because ego deaths become really hard when we just compound and keep ignoring and bypassing and not actually seeing that we need to change. And then it comes to a point where life forces us to change through some huge event or a crisis or something that happens in our life where we have no choice but to change. And yeah, then we change. But the thing is, there's all these steps before that where we didn't have to change out of pain and suffering. We could have actually done it out of just joy and interest for evolving our lives. And I found that, does changing my personality actually have to be that hard, that painful? And does my, ego death, have to be a huge drama every time? I have found no, that sometimes I can have a little mourning period and, die to myself and kill off parts of my personality that don't serve me anymore. And it like just, yes, it requires me to emote through it and feel it. But then it's like a wave, it passes and I change and I become a different person. So, on the nature of change, let's say you are at point A and you want to get to point B. So, let's say point A, a few examples could be I'm single right now and I really want to find my partner. Or it could be I'm making this amount in my business and I really want to grow my business, grow my revenue, just grow the people that I serve. Or it could be, I've been a little bit static in the past few months and I really want to, work out and get into better shape and look a certain way. So insert whatever point A looks like for you in this example as I walk you through this example. So then point B is you getting on the other side of that. So let's say if you are single and you're desiring a partner, you're at A, and point B is I have a partner, I'm happy and I'm in love. I have the relationship of my dreams. And then we have, the business. Oh, I want this. Like I'm making, I don't know, 500,000 a year and I want to be making $1 million. So point B is I'm making $1 million and I'm working X amount of hours a week. Or the dream body, it's like, okay, I look this way right now. And point B is I've lost this many pounds. My body looks and feels a certain way. I feel a certain way. Okay. So in between A and B, imagine there is the river of change that's in the middle of point A and point B. Now, you are not, do you know, actually, let me ask you first, do you know why you are not at point B yet? Like, really think about it. You're point A. You want B. Why are you not at B right now? You're not at B right now because you are not the person who has B. Chances are, let's go with this, single and wants a relationship. You're single and you want a relationship. And there's certain things right now that are keeping you single, whether it's your own choice of being single, not wanting to date, or whether it's some issues that you're having where you're feeling like you're dating people, but you're not really meeting the right person. Whatever it is happening in your world, and then you fast forward to point B and you're in a happy relationship. But if you were the version of you who was in a happy relationship, you would have that now, but you don't. Which means that in between today and that dream, on the other side of the river, something has to change. Would you agree with me? Something has to change. And you can sit here hoping, for example, the second example I use with the business, that someone will magically knock on your door and say, hey, I want to hire you and I'm gonna pay you $500,000 for this one job so that you can, take the leap that you wanted to, or that you accidentally fill out a lottery ticket and then you win that money somehow. Nothing is impossible, but you can either sit there hoping for that your environment will change, that circumstances will change, that the other person, that someone that you're interested in will change and then take an interest in you where now it's maybe not reciprocal. Whatever that story is, you can sit there hoping for something in your environment to change. Or you can change to accelerate, become that person who is a match for B, who's like, yeah, duh, this is my normal every day. Of course I'm happily in love. Of course, I'm running $1 million business. Of course I have this incredible body. Like somebody who is, it's so normal for them that they don't have to think about it as a goal. The same way that, for example, for me to travel, like to be able to book a ticket anytime I want and just hop on the internet, book a ticket and go to a different country, it's not a dream for me. It's not a point B for me. It's a point A. I don't know, that's maybe not the best metaphor, but it's not a dream for me because it's my everyday normal. It's like if I go down the grocery to the grocery store and I'm hungry and I want, chicken, I go to the grocery store and I get chicken. If I want to, go on an epic travel next month and go somewhere really cool, I just go in there, I buy a ticket and I go. I have built my life to have the flexibility, to have the income, to have that ability for me to pick up and go somewhere incredible whenever I want, for the most part. So it's not like this is a big thing, because I have embodied the version of me who can just do that. So A and B. You're A, you want to be at B, but you're not at B, you are at A. So what needs to happen is you need to cross the river of change. And this is the process. This is literally the skill set that I'm talking about. This is literally like the work that I take my private clients through, that I also teach in my programs, of learning like how do I cross the river? How do I do this? What needs to happen? And there's a few steps that need to happen in order to cross the river, which I'll address in a moment. What you need to know now is that at some point, if you want to go from A to B, you got to cross the river. And the river is you going into the unknown. It's you going somewhere where you haven't gone before. Because you are not going to change by doing the same exact things you're already doing, because that is going to keep you the same. Your personality is going to remain the same. If you're thinking the same, you're acting the same, and you're feeling the same, nothing changes, which means that in order to change, you're going to need to change how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And if you can do that, then that means that you're going to go into the unknown. If you can do that, it means that you're going to take a step into the river. And yes, fears are going to come up, because you're like, oh my God, this is really uncomfortable. I've never crossed this river before. I don't know what I'm doing. If I take a different action, in my business, in my love life, in the way that I'm eating, in the way that I'm working out, if I do things differently, will it work out? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? How am I going to do this? How am I going to cross the river? How? And that's where most people stay stuck for months or years at a time, because they sit at the edge of that river and they know they got to cross in order to get to B, but they're too scared, or they don't know how to actually create that change, how to change how they think, how to change how they act, how to change how they feel. But that's literally what has to be done in order for the crossing to happen. Yeah? So now that you have this image in your head, I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to give you some examples from my life to give some context to this, as well as an example of what I'm going through now. Now, I have learned the art and science of change, not only from, extensively studying it and teaching it, but also because I've led myself through it so many times. A huge example of that, which I talked about in the first few episodes of this podcast, was my couch surfing journey back in 2016, when I decided that I had to change my life. At the time, I was, working in corporate America. I was in a job where I was, working like 60 to 80-hour weeks in New York City, tiny, tiny, tiny little apartment, paying half of my salary just on rent, feeling very miserable, and just feeling like my life was empty. And it just really this perpetual question of, is this all there is? Is this all there is to life? It can't be that I just wake up in the morning and I go to the gym and then I go work and then I work for 10 hours and then I go to some alcohol-fueled party with my friends and then I come home and I sleep for 6 hours and I do it all over again. Like, this isn't fun. This isn't joyful. I don't feel like I have meaning in my life like this. And so this was one of the moments where I had to wait until life hit me real hard, because I knew I had to change, but I couldn't cross the river. I didn't want to cross the river. And because of that, life intervened, as it so often does when it needs us to change, and we won't do it because life loves us so much. It will put people, circumstances in our way so that we can pivot to come back into alignment with our highest good. That's how benevolent life is, at least from where I sit and how I see it. so benevolent. And so what happened is that I remember within a month, I had all these crazy events happen where my grandfather died. And then a month later, I thought I was gonna get this promotion. I didn't get the promotion. And then the rent in my New York apartment like skyrocketed to $700 more, which I couldn't afford because I didn't get the promotion. And then my ex-boyfriend broke up with me at the time, and that was devastating. And I remember being like, "Oh my God, what do I do?" But actually, what the universe had done is it gave me everything I needed to leave, because all the things that were holding me back, the boyfriend, the apartment, the job, basically dissolved within a month's time. And if I was unwilling to change and I wanted to stay the same and I wanted nothing to change, then I would have gone off and I would have looked for another job in the same city. I would have looked for another boyfriend and I would have looked for another apartment. And I would have just plugged right back into the same old reality. But that moment where the universe intervened was the moment where I realized there was a bit inside of me, that like a voice, my intuition that said, what if ... What if I do something radically different? And mind you, I was 25 back then and I had no idea about the law of attraction. I had no idea about the biology of change, like everything that I know so well now. I can look back and dissect exactly what was happening, but I myself didn't know that at the time. I was totally going into it blind. And yeah, it was that question of what if I do something differently? And then life supported me to change. And fast forward 9 months later, and that's when I went off on a one-way ticket out of New York. And I had this social experiment that I had designed where I would couch surf and sleep in the homes of people within my human network. So most of them strangers, friends of friends, like couch surfing around the world without the website, just tapping into the power of human connection. And I did that for almost a year. And on the back side of that, from talking about A to B, I actually didn't know what B was. I didn't have a goal of what B would be. I just knew that I had to change in order for me to change my life and for me to have any kind of opportunity. Like it was like a lifeline of having a different way of living. And what came out on the other side of that, I couldn't even have like put on my vision board. I mean, I traveled the world. I interviewed hundreds of people around the world, befriended them. People started to ask me how I was doing what I was doing. I started to get hired. And, fast forward a year and a half from that, I had started my first business. Never thought I'd be a business owner. Never thought I'd be a coach. Like not at all in my radar. Scaled my business to 6 figures plus within 9 months of opening doors. Like it was just bananas what happened on the other side of that. Started traveling the world, started within 3 years of that trip, I was getting featured on Forbes, Business Insiders, TEDx. Like my brand blew up. I started, working with some incredible industry leaders. Like just what happened in my career because I left my old one behind without any, just with this intention of crossing the river was insane. It was insane what happened on the other side of that. And I was terrified. And I did not have any of the tools that I have today. When I got on that one-way ticket, I was like, how am I going to literally afford my life without a salary? I had some money saved up, but definitely not enough, to last me the entire year, or so I thought. How am I going to support myself financially? What if I just, killed my career and now I'm going to be behind and everyone's going to think I'm crazy and everyone's going to make fun of me because I'm doing something stupid. And a lot of people think that I'm crazy and that what I'm doing is unreasonable. And, there was all this like huge laundry list of all the ways that it couldn't work, all the ways that I didn't think I was enough, all the ways that I was afraid, all the ways that I was afraid of going into the unknown. That was the first time in my life that I went hard into that river of change, literally without anything. No boat, no floaties, just me, myself, and I, and no freaking education or toolkit to carry me through. And damn, like what came out of B, when I got to B on the other side of the river, it was it was incredible in the best way possible what I achieved. But dude, the swim was rough. It was not an easy swim. It was not an easy swim. It was hard. Change was hard. It was hard. It was painful. It was a struggle bus. Like, I just didn't know what I was doing half the time. I didn't know how to emotionally, like, regulate myself. My nervous system was totally unprepared for the challenge ahead. I didn't have a network of supportive people the way that I do now. I didn't have mentors. I didn't have, the thousands of practitioner training hours that I have now. And guess what? I still made it through. And I made it better. Like, what I created was unbelievable. And I unconsciously had to change my personality for me to get across. I had to drop my ego identity of being a fancy, like, Ivy League graduate and in a very prestigious corporate job. Like, nobody, when I left New York, nobody knew what, like, my school was in New York and be like, oh my God, you went to that school? You went to an Ivy League school? Ooh. Some of you might be like, what the heck is it? Even listening to this, like, what the heck is an Ivy League school? I had to totally drop the identity of, I come from this school and I'm come from this job. I live in New York. I have this many shoes. I have that. Like, there's so many parts of me that had to drop, and I had to humble the freak out of myself, because now I was just a girl without a job, traveling on the world, relying on the kindness of strangers with one carry-on to, like, clothe me for the next 9 months, just t-shirts, like 5 t-shirts, 3 shorts, I got stripped down to the basics. And because of that, my personality did not work in the new environment in the best possible way. And the only thing I had to come back to was my nature, which is open, curious, loves connecting to people, loves striking up a conversation with a stranger in the bus. The only reason why I wouldn't do it is because I don't have time, because I'm busy, because conditioning. Who loves to see the world, who loves to explore, loves to understand things, loves to find the meaning of things, loves to go deeper. All my nature started getting in the driver's seat of my life instead of my personality trying to control everything. Because in that moment in my life, it couldn't. But guess what happened? After I got on the other side of that and I started becoming a business owner, because again, I didn't have the tools that I have now, the ones that I know and teach, then I started to once again rebuild a new personality based on the old patterns. So now I wasn't in a fancy corporate job, but I was a 6-figure business owner, and I was a, like, hotshot coach, and I was this, and I was that, and I was this, and I was that. And once again, life asked me to change. And I had, a really rude awakening, which I won't go into all of my changes, but in 2019, where I was like, woohoo, I am on top of the world with my business. Look at me. I'm so busy. I'm so fancy. Identity, personality being constructed. And then boom, it fell apart when I had a health crisis, and combined with a love crisis, you could call it, that again made me cross the river once more and realizing, okay, it's not enough for me to build just a business that makes X amount of money and gets X, Y amount of recognition. I really need to focus on the bigger why and the meaning of what I'm creating, and also on my health and making sure that what I'm building is sustainable to me. I learned that lesson kind of. I learned it. I want to give myself credit where credit is due. I learned it ish, but then clearly didn't learn it good enough, because in early 2022, I had another health crisis and another life crisis at the same time, So, and I talk about this a lot in the podcast about, the breakup that I had and how that led me to, just rewrite, just commit to reprogramming my story around love and changing my personality once again to be a match for the dream relationship that I was calling out. P.S. like, side note, I'm in a dream relationship right now. But anyways, that's another podcast for another time. So knowing that once again, I had to cross that river of change. But the thing is, here's what's been happening. As I cross the river of change and cross it again and cross it again, and as I've also acquired embodied experience from both doing it myself, from leading people through their own rivers of change, guiding them, and also from studying it and understanding what the neuroscience behind this is. Like, it was such freedom when I understood that there's a biology to change, and there's actually, like, chemicals, and there's things that are happening inside of our bodies that we can, actually not, I don't want to say have control over, but yeah, we are in the driver's seat of the ways that of how quickly we can change. We are in the driver's seat, which is the episode that I did on my Dr. Joe Dispenza training. So as I started to see that, like, oh, there's a better way. I remember in my crisis in early 2022, it was really, really painful, but my eyes were open this time. I was not unconscious as I was going through it. It was the first time where I realized, oh my gosh, I'm crossing the river of change right now. And I have a toolbox, but I was still like very messy, you know? I was really like, oh my God, why did I have to wait until it was painful and life forced me to change? Couldn't I catch this before? Couldn't I do it before it got painful, before I got hit in the face with it? And that was a huge lesson from that. And I truly believe in terms of, I went through an entire health and initiation. I also talk about this in another episode. I really feel like I've embodied the lesson of loving differently, changing my personality to be a fit for a healthy, loving relationship, and changing my personality in order to be a fit to be really kind and healthy to my body, like to get my 9 hours of sleep, to drink enough water, to put in my body the nutrients that it needs and deserves. So I've made quantum leaps in these areas of my life. And the lesson that came from my last, river crossing, you could say, was that, okay, I'm seeing this. I am capable of crossing this river. I know, like, I have to do this. I know I need to change. I know I'm going to be okay on the other side, even though right now it feels like I'm lost and it feels like it hurts and I don't know what to do. And also, wow, ouch, right? I did wait until the universe threw rocks at me. So metaphorically speaking, for me to wake up. And so when that happened, and it was a crisis once again, which is usually how unconsciously most of humanity waits for a crisis to happen before they meaningfully change. Well, here's the thing. There's another option on the menu. You don't have to wait until like the universe throws rocks at you. You can actually continuously change yourself joyfully and at choice. And when you choose to do that, then life becomes more graceful because you're not like facing all these crises every time your soul is asking for evolution. And so that's what's happening with me now as I am being initiated into another big river crossing, because I've realized, and I'm going to be recording a different episode about this, but what I've realized is that I'm in a place right now in my life where, because I understand identity work now, and how to do it and the science of it and the art of it. And I'm actually evolving so quickly that I'm catching up with myself. And what I mean by that is back to the original point of going through a big pivot in my business. I'm realizing I had this huge realization when I was teaching my group program, Business by Soul. So funny. I channeled that entire program, and I remember the program came through me, like it literally just channeled through me. And as I was writing everything in this program down, I thought to myself, God, really? Like me? You want me to teach this? I'm not a business coach. Like, what are you talking about? And I remember mentally, my personality self was like, this doesn't fit. This is not my personality. It doesn't fit with the identity I've created with myself. Why would I teach this program? It's not a match for who I am. That's me thinking that because I'm this and I teach this and I do this and I do that. It doesn't fit inside of the box of what I think and how I think, act, and feel. And then this program channeled through me, and I just got this really clear, message of I have to teach this. And it's interesting because being on the other side, I've been interviewing my students, and just yesterday, I had an interview with one of them, and then another one submitted a testimonial. And I was listening to their feedback about this program and how it transformed their lives and how it changed them completely. And they'll never look at business the same again. And who they are, like their identity completely evolved over the course of those few months. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I had this aha moment of realizing it, like the dots connected. And I realized that the pivot that I'm going through in my business is actually because the act of me teaching Business by Soul made me realize that I had to realign my business to my soul in a bigger way than before. And so, I'll share more details when the time is right, but I have to change my business model. I have to. I'm seeing me currently, A, right now where I am, and then I see B on the other side. And I know that the version of me, the B, who has, you know, an evolved version of my business by soul and who is, more expansive, who has more time freedom, who is, a mother or a mother to be, who is in community, who is exploring certain hobbies and passions and interests and giving that more of her attention, who is serving people at a deeper level, who is serving more people in a more leveraged way, that version of me is B. But I'm not fully anchored into that right now as A. So for me to bridge the gap between who I am right now and what I have right now and what I know is possible for me and what I'm creating in my vision, I have to cross this river of change. And I can see, from the way that the online industry is quickly shifting, things that used to work don't work anymore. I can already predict the crisis that I would stumble into if I just continue to ignore that. And so there's a point where there's something shifted in me in the past couple of years where I went from, ooh, I don't know what changes. I don't know what I'm doing. La 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 la. Oh, interesting. I know what changes. I intellectually understand it, but shit, I keep coming into these, running up against these crises. And then, oh my God, it's a crisis. It's here, but I know I'm here. I know I have to change. Like, oops, I realized it a little too late, but I got it now. But I get what I'm supposed to do, which was way more graceful, painful, but graceful at the same time. And now it's like the next step is, oh Lord, I'm opting out of unconsciously attracting a crisis into my life. And instead I'm going to choose to face the fear now, to face the discomfort now of knowing that the way that I'm running my business now is not a match for the woman I've become, for the identity that I've evolved into. It is a match for the identity I used to be, but is not a match for who I am and who I'm becoming and where I'm going. So as a result of that, I need to make changes. I need to make changes in my business model, in, for example, my systems and how I'm running systems. In the offerings, I need to change my product suite, what I'm offering, what I'm going to take, off the market. I need to make changes in how I'm marketing so that it's more in alignment with my values and what's important to me, and like basically unbrainwashing myself from all of those marketing bros and funnel experts and coaching experts and all the people who I gave my power away to in the past and I gave my authority away to in the past, believing that they knew better than me. And all those moments and all those decisions I made from that disempowered state that now live as processes and systems and protocols in my business have to be looked at. They need to be dismantled. They need to be undone so that I can replace them with systems and processes that are intentional and that are in alignment to my authenticity and my nature and my values and who I'm here to be and what I want to do and how I want to create. Yeah. So as I'm now transitioning, I'm realizing that, yeah, things need to change, but I don't need to wait until it gets so bad that I have to change. I can start now. And the way that it starts when, if in case you're wondering, well, how do I do that? What needs to happen? Now, full disclosure, I have an entire framework and process that I take my private clients through, or if you come into in my mastermind or my group program, I walk you through it as well. Like, it's called a rewrite your life process. It's a subconscious reprogramming method that I've created, and it's like very incredible. It's step by step. It's really easy to understand, and it breaks this down perfectly. But for the in this podcast, I don't have the time because it's a whole program to go through it. But what I can share with you is that the biggest reason why people won't initiate change themselves, they won't lead themselves, they won't be the ones who are standing at the edge of that river and say, I'm going to lead myself through change instead of waiting for change to be basically like, instead of waiting to be slapped with it, you can lead yourself through it. And the first thing is understanding that the biggest reason why you won't go is because you're afraid. That is the biggest reason. It's fear. It's fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of death, which is the most natural thing for us human beings. It's embedded in the human condition. But it's important to understand why we won't. Because rationally it makes sense, right? If I said to you, hey, you're at point A, you want to get to point B yet, right? Yeah, I want to get to point B. To get to point B, you need to change. Yes, I want to change. Okay. So here are the steps. Here's what you can do. Here's a toolkit that I'll give you for how you can go from A to B. And, I'll walk you through it. I'll guide you through it. Yes, 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 yes. I want to go through it. And then you step into the river and you have your toolkit and you have somebody guiding you and you have all the support that you could possibly want, and you stop. Why would you do that? Fear of the unknown, fear of death. When I step into this river, I'm not going back, which means this version of me dies here. I'm leaving this version of me here. And that's where, the philosophers and the meditation teachers talk about that concept of attachment, that we attach to certain identities. We attach to certain ways of how we need to be. And in many ways, we unconsciously, again, very human, we attach. You might be attached to the identity. Oh, but I'm known in my industry for this thing. If I change, then what happens? Then I'm not gonna make any money ever again. Then nobody's gonna care what I have to say. Then I'm irrelevant. Then I don't matter. Then I have to start all over again. These are stories I'm sharing with you. These are stories I've told myself. It's stories that my clients say, maybe it's familiar to you as well. And underneath that story is like, well, if I do this, then I think, you're thinking, well, I'm doing something that isn't familiar, that I haven't proved, me doing things this way have proven to work. Like I show up for work, I do these tasks or I do these projects, and it's pretty reasonable to expect that this amount of income is going to come in at the end of the month. But if I do something different, then what would happen? And, I find myself in this rabbit hole, the rabbit hole of, but then, if I change my business model, then what if nobody's interested in working with me anymore? And then, there's going to be all these months where I'm changing the business model. I'm going to spend all this money, and then I have an entire team to take care of. And then nobody's going to buy from me because now I'm doing something different. Nobody gets it. And all of a sudden, all my money's going to go away, and I'm going to be, destitute, and I'm going to be living in a cardboard box. And I'm going to be homeless, and nobody's going to care about me. I'm going to be a washout and whatever. And like you just, you go down. It's like the spiral of doom. And I've been through it. Maybe you've been through it. I know lots of people who've been through it, friends, clients, students. And we just kind of stop there. And then it's like, oh, fuck that. I'm not crossing that river. So it's like, I'm just going to distract myself for a few more months until a crisis comes up. And then there's a point where, the freaking A is lighting on fire. And you're like, if I don't cross the river, I'm going to literally die. So it's better for me to risk dying than knowing 100% I'm going to die. Because the universe, universe life, it's going to bring death upon you. That's not... There's no question about that. That's one of the constants in life. And the only constant, by the way, wink, wink, is change. So as I'm going through this, I'm realizing, my gosh, this is about me and my fears. Because a lot of these stories that I'm telling myself are stories that I'm telling myself in my head. And any story that you're telling, your thoughts, think about your thoughts as like, it's the floaty that's sitting on top, like going with the water metaphor, that's sitting on top of a river. But how you feel is the anchor that keeps it in the ground, that keeps the floaty from moving too far. The emotions that we have, our feelings, are what anchor in the thoughts. And when we can actually feel and address our feelings and truly feel them to their completion, then the anchor disappears and the thought can float away. But these stories that we tell ourselves, and the examples that I gave around, well, if I change, then nobody's going to care. And then what will become of me, and I'll become irrelevant, and da-da-da-da, and all those stories, they really just, if we track them back to the same source, it all comes from I'm afraid of change because I'm interpreting it as scary. I'm interpreting it, there's a part of me rather that's interpreting it as something that will cause me harm, as something that will take away from me, as something that will kill me. And it's partially true. When you change, part of you dies. Part of you goes away because you're evolving. You're evolving into a new variation of yourself. You're evolving into, you know, whatever 2.0, 3.0, 4.0 looks like. And so when I let go of the stories and just realize that every story, catch myself in my thoughts, now that I understand how change works, I know that it's like, oh, it's how I think, how I act, how I feel. It's just my personality. I'm like, oh, those are my thoughts. That's my old self thinking right now. So what is my new self that's on B? What does she think? My new self is like, oh my gosh, it's so easy to, make these big changes. And I love having, this level of income in my life. And I love having this level of freedom. Like she's thinking like, this is great. This is amazing. Of course it's available to me. I do it every day. It's like breathing air. And so there's a sense of future pacing that needs to happen and connecting. This is like going more into like practices that I have in my daily routine, which is that it's that future pacing and understanding who is like really connecting to who is that version of you who's on the other side. Who is B? What does he or she think? How does he or she feel? How does she or she act in her day to day? And if I can see her, if I can see that version of me and to start to think, act, and feel like her, I will start pulling myself towards her. And to do that, I have to catch and see the fear and process it and be with it and not emotionally bypass myself and just get stuck like so many people do in the stories, in the endless hours and hours of stories. We think 60, 70,000 thoughts a day, 90% of them are the same as the day before. We're just constantly brainwashing ourselves with that old identity. So it does take an act of courage, and it does take effort, and it does take momentum to say, oh, there it is again. I'm about to, make a different decision in my business or my love life or my health, whatever. And there it is again. I'm afraid right now. Why am I afraid? And instead of just reacting and defaulting to the decision of the past self, that's the moment where I breathe, where I sit with myself and I realize, oh my gosh, I'm here. I'm on the edge of that river. And do I want to swim? Am I willing? Do I have the courage to? Can I take a leap? And that's the moment where I literally need to sit and soothe myself. That's where the inner child work comes in real handy. Just sit with myself and be like, it's okay. This is what's happening. I'm on the edge. It's scary. Remind myself that it's like, hey, I'm doing it now, so I don't have to be hit by crisis. It's better to do it now, enjoy, and enjoy the process than be forced, have my hand forced to do it later. So in those moments, I'm like, okay, I'm afraid. And recognizing this very simple fear of change, which is just fear of the unknown and death, it's really soothing to me because I'm like, oh, it's me and the rest of humanity. Okay, no problem. I can overcome myself right now. I have the tools. I have the ability to sit here and recognize that right now I am being emotionally hijacked by a very human fear. And all I need to do is just recognize that, bring my awareness to it, breathe, sound, breath, movement, like move through it, emotionally release. Recognize that the stories I'm telling myself are lies from my past self to keep me where I am. And then just make a different choice. And the way that I'm going to know that it's the right choice is because I am going to take it to soul first. I'm going to say, so I'm choosing to think this way. Soul, is this expansive for me? Is this in alignment to the B version of me? Is this, it's like really dropping in and asking like, does this feel like it honors my nature? And that then has a completely different feeling in my body. It feels like expansion and opportunity and possibility instead of what it feels like to be stuck in my past self, which is contraction, stuckness, just like this feeling of desperation that I feel when I am on autopilot in my old personality self. It feels differently in my body. So if I get that expansive feeling in my body, then all there is to do is to overcome my fear. And easier said than done, but there comes a point where we just need to choose that we're going to do it, right? Like there's comes a point where, maybe you're going cliff diving and you've committed to cliff diving and you're sitting at the edge of the cliff and it looks scary. You're looking down, your legs are shaking. You're like, oh my God, I don't know. I don't know why I committed to this. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I can do this. I don't want to do this. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. And all those human fears come online. But at some point, if you want to cliff jump, you just need to like jump. You need to overcome your fear. You need to overcome yourself and take the leap. And that's what it looks like in my process of how I lead myself through change. It's going through the motions, not emotionally bypassing myself and knowing that I'm sitting at that edge and it's going to require me. It is expected that I will need to think differently, that I will need to act differently, that I will need to feel differently. And that means that the decisions that I'm making, for example, in pivoting my business model, are going to be radically different than anything I've done in the past. And for the most part, actually, pretty much unfamiliar, which is scary. So what I like to wrap this up with is just, this is the big lesson that I've learned in the past almost decade. And also there's practical ways that I embed this new way of being, this embed like change in my everyday life. And even it's a simple things like in the morning when I wake up, I give myself half an hour just to be in bed. And when I'm like transitioning from dream time, from that sleep state, and my brain waves are transitioning from like deep theta into alpha, which is the creative state, instead of getting up, like going on my phone, doing stuff, talking to someone, whatever, I just sit in that alpha brain state. And the night before, I asked myself questions like, how can I do this better? I ask my soul, can you help me find a solution to this? I asked for help. I asked for different ways of thinking about things, for helping me expand, for helping me think outside of the box. And in that alpha state, oh my gosh, I'm always getting downloads and I notice my thoughts because everything moves slower when you're in the alpha state. And, that's also one of the benefits of meditation. You're slowing down your brain waves. You can literally like catch your thoughts. And I notice myself having a thought like, oh, I'm so worried about whether, this launch is going to go well. And then I notice I'm like, why? That's version A of me. I'm like, oh no, I don't need that. And then I'm like, I just see myself like sweeping the thought away. And I think, what would version B of me think right now? It's like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm so grateful that I ran that program because now that I'm looking at all these incredible testimonials, I can see how life-changing it was. And then I accept that thought. I surrender to that thought. I'm like, that thought tastes good. And then I feel good and I feel grateful and I feel excited. And then I anchor that in just by being in it, by basking in that new way of being. And I do this for like half an hour, just catching my thoughts and just reprogramming them in real time and really just allowing myself to slow down and like be version B of myself in that moment before I open my eyes. And then I and open my eyes and I have an action item of what's one B thing that I can do today that will shift me, that will get me out of my comfort zone. So that is one way, one of the many tools in my toolbox that I use to make change a part of my everyday, it sounds weird to say that change is a part of my everyday routine. Now, does it get less scary? I don't know. I don't think so. But do I get better at meeting the fear? Yes, I do. So yeah, that helps me so much. And I notice even like in the beginning, the way I start my day, I'm already starting by operating as the new version of me who's on the other side of the river. And the more I connect with her and the more I can feel her in my body now, the more I'm pulling my current self into my future self, if that makes sense. It stops being a pushing. It stops being like a scramble or a run to make it to the other side before the fire, the ground under me burns down. And it more so becomes this like joyful, exciting game of pulling like my higher self pulling me towards myself, basically. And I also seek support. I have mentors. I have a therapist. I have incredible friends. Um, and also I have my work, which I love because I'm forever a student of my own work, and I find that just teaching this work changes me. Just teaching this work puts me in a position where I must embody it further because I can only take people as far as I've gone myself. And so that in itself is a huge motivation for me to just lead myself through this process. So, yeah, that feels like everything I wanted to share today around how I lead myself through change and just giving you a bit of a behind the scenes look into my thought process and um, and what it looks like for me. I hope that you enjoyed. I know that today it was really action packed. But if there's anything that I can leave you with, it's what is it that you have to change, but perhaps you're avoiding it, or you're looking the other way, but that you really need to change in your life and business. And also, if you were to reflect today on, who is it that's version A right now, and who is it actually that you're becoming? Like on, the other side, B, that version of you, how does he or she think, act, and feel? And really reflecting on that. And what is it going to take for you to bridge that gap and to really cross the river? So, that for some of you, that might be what you need to take away. But for those of you who are wondering, oh my gosh, yes, I like this is really I want more guidance on this. This is something that I feel like I could really receive support with. Then this is something that, duh, hello, I teach. And so, there's currently two different ways outside of private coaching that you can come into my world and really learn how to cross that river of change, and how to create some, incredible results in your life. That are live programs, yeah, because I do have some courses that I can link to in the show notes where you can lead yourself through this. But the main one is the one that I mentioned before, which is Business by Soul. Business by Soul is a 3-month group coaching program that I lead, where I am taking you through that journey of what it actually feels like to create a business that is in alignment to your higher soul's calling, and what changes need to happen so that you're operating a business that is in alignment to your values, that is actually operating from your soul's purpose, where you are operating in your zone of genius, and you're also creating the income that you're desiring and having an impact on the soulmate clients that you desire to serve. So this is really perfect for you if you're maybe like right under, I would say if you're like in that multi six figure. This is also great. I have a lot of students under 6 figures that also go through this program. But basically, it's for those of you who are like, how do I actually get beyond the $500,000 mark without having to be a push, but rather how do I float to that number by becoming the version of me, becoming the CEO that like knows your worth, knows what you're here to do, has really clear vision, and also has a clear action plan, a roadmap on what are the actions that you need to take in your business right now to grow your income, to reach more people, and to create more meaningful, impactful content in a way that resonates with who you truly are. So that's Business by Soul. And I don't know at the time when this recording is going to be launched, so I can't tell you when the next cohort is, but we will put it in the show notes below. So you're more than free to apply to that. Or if you have any questions, you're welcome to message me or my team. So that's option one. Option two is if you want to go into an even deeper dive into this journey with me, I also have a mastermind that's open. It's a very intimate, high touch container where we will be going deeper into the concepts that I teach. Business by Soul is the foundational knowledge. It's basically what you must know to start. But my mastermind is really like we start to apply these concepts of how is it that we can change. And in the mastermind, you're going to choose something really big and really scary that you want to create in the next 6 months. And you're going to come into this mastermind with that intention. And I'm going to show you how to change yourself, how to evolve, how to actually I'll share with you my rewrite your life process and my proprietary methods on how can you make the transition between who you are now and who you're becoming in your business as well as your personal life, because everything is connected. And in the mastermind, we are focused on career, but we're also talking about everything that surrounds that: health, love, personal relationship with yourself. So it's really going that and doing this together in a group of incredible human beings who are all sharing a similar vision. And we get to do it together in a really high touch, intimate way. Outside of private coaching, this is the most high touch way that I work with my clients. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can DM me the word mastermind on Instagram, and I'm happy to share more. And for those of you interested in Business by Soul, you can DM me BBS. All right. So everything will be linked in the show notes. And as always, if you loved today's episode, you found value out of it, would so appreciate if you could give this a rating on iTunes. It helps the right people find this. It helps us grow. And I would say that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time. Thank you, beautiful humans, for tuning in to today's episode of It's Not What You Think. If you loved what you received today, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as it helps us reach even more amazing listeners like you. If we aren't already connected on social media, come receive even more tips and inspiration by following me on Instagram at Celine DaCosta or visiting my website at CelineDaCosta.com. After listening to this episode, I invite you to take a few moments to reflect. What stood out to you? What were your key takeaways or breakthroughs? And if there was one action step you could take from this, what would it be? Thank you again for joining me on this journey. I'm sending you so much love, and I can't wait to connect in the next episode. Until then, keep sharing your unique gifts and living out your most magical life.